Alrighty, so today I want to talk about a specific situation that the player base has brought to not only my attention, but just in general, right? And that is the treatment of Vegito compared to Gogeta. Now, this is something I don't want to say rubbed me the wrong way, but I just didn't feel was like the most accurate thing ever because as of recent, I'm sure as you guys know, Omatsu and the Dokkan team has displayed a bit of what people are calling favoritism towards Gogeta. So if we type in Gogeta here, we can just look at the releases, and this isn't the most helpful way to do this, I suppose, because of the 10-year anniversary. So I'm just trying to think on what website would be the best way to do this. If we go to the database, I think that would probably be a better way to go about it. So if we go in here, right, and we look at just everything since the 10th anniversary, right? We have how many Gogeta units, and we're going to be including everything within this specific video. So if we look at the cursor here, we've got one Gogeta, two Gogetas, three Gogetas. I'm not going to count this one, but it's very close, right? Then if we go over here, we just keep going, right? This is we'll get to this later. This is four Gogetas, five Gogetas, and then with the newest summonable LR, with this being the Gogeta and Frieza, that is going to make six since the 10-year anniversary has started. Now, if we look at Vegito, we have one Vegito, two Vegetos, and we keep going. Just looking, making sure I don't see anything wrong. This one doesn't count in the way that the blues doesn't count, right? But this is the closest thing we have to that, and that's what we're going to be talking about mainly in today's video. And then that is it, right? So, then this Vegito as well. So when we look at it like that, it's a pretty easy way to sort of say like, oh, okay, the devs hate Vegito and Gogeta is always like, getting the favoritism from the game. And that is why I want to talk about this today, because I don't necessarily agree with that narrative because of the way that Vegito has historically been handled in this game. I do not think that the devs hate him. And I also think that there isn't like some crazy amount of preferential treatment compared to Gogetas and Vegetos. So if you find that interesting, go ahead and dive into this video with me. And with that being said, let's go ahead and really get started. So GDC is, I think, a really good example of how we can compare these things, where we have this Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta and then a non-playable blue Vegito, right? This is sort of exacerbating the issue and making it feel like Super Saiyan or Gogeta is getting the preferential treatment because we do not have a playable Vegito. But in the year of 2025 alone, I want to direct your attention more to who was the best character in the game for a majority of 2025. The answer is this character right here, who is Vegito. And usually, when there is a Vegito and Gogeta, we'll look at this historically, when there are Gogeta and Vegito characters, most of the time, I should pull this up so we can go to Fused Fighters, but most of the time, the Vegito unit is just better. And that has been historically how it has worked throughout like almost all of Dokkan. When there are a Gogeta and Vegito, the Vegito character tends to be the better version when they are released directly together. So the 5-year anniversary, I think, is a really good example of this. By the end of it, I felt that most people believed that Vegito Blue was better than Gogeta Blue. And then when they got their EZAs, they were very similar in skeleton, and it was very sort of tough to differentiate the two, especially in the base form, just because of how similar they were, right? I think that is always going to be a tough one to sort of digest, but I think Tech Vegito was a little bit better than STR Gogeta, but it was very, very close in that case. When we had the 3-year anniversary characters, the Vegito character was better, right? The ability to counter Gogeta, especially even on their EZAs, this didn't change. This Vegito was better than this Gogeta. So when we look at the 3 anniversaries that they headlined, the Vegito unit was better in all 3 of the cases. Then if we go back here, right, and we look at where is this? Is there a second page here? I can't find it all of a sudden. It's probably because the Super EZAs. But when we had the best unit in the game ever, really, STR Super Gogeta, the character that came out to be better than him, you guessed it, Vegito, right? Physical Vegito Blue was an LR level, like, quality character in terms of like EZA. His EZA was as good as the best characters in the game when he came out, and summonable LRs were in the game at this point. So like when you look at it this way, I think that like historically, the Vegito characters when they've been released together have leaned towards the Vegito character usually being better. Now, Tech Vegito and or Tech. Why am I saying Tech Vegito? Tech Gogeta and STR Vegito. This is like I think one of the closer cases here where you could argue that Tech Gogeta was a little bit better, but even then, that one was really close because of the fact that STR Vegito released in August and then this guy released in June of the next year on JP. So it was pretty obvious that these characters were designed at the same time, and that made for a bit of an interesting predicament. Now, where Dokkan, I think, is showing some Gogeta favoritism is in terms of the frequency of the release. That is where I think we can argue that there is some amount of character biases being displayed here. Just because if we go back to 2024, that's where we'll start, right? 2024, we have one, and this is, again, going to be including everything. 1 Gogeta, 2 Gogetas, 3 Gogetas, 4 Gogetas, 5 Gogetas, 6 Gogetas, 7, 8. So 8 Gogetas since 2024. And then when we look at Vegetos, we have 1, and this one is extremely loose because it's a free-to-play character, right? 1 Vegeto, 2 Vegetos, 3 Vegetos, 4 Vegetos, right? And then so we'll say 8.5 with this for Gogeta, and then we'll say 4.5 for Vegeto, okay? So in terms of frequency, yes, they are dropping Gogeta a bit more. But like if we really look at it, when it just comes to just like an objective, when like the standpoints of the characters, right? 3 of the Super Saiyan 4 Gogetas from the release schedule here are Super Saiyan 4. And Vegeto's version of Super Saiyan 4 is not covered to the extent in GT like it is in Heroes. It's a completely different ballgame when we're talking about Heroes. So 3 of the Gogetas are something that Vegeto does not have access to in the form of a Dokkan Fest or a Carnival LR format. So if we had a Super Saiyan 4 Vegeto, like just imagine for a second, you bet your bottom dollar we would have gotten a Super Saiyan 4 Vegeto, right? Like that's the thing, but we don't have it. So Super Saiyan 4 being a very popular form, being one of the big moneymakers for Dokkan, right? I've really, like, this is one of the most hyped things I've ever seen in the history of this game playing it. And I've been part of the community for about 5 years now. This is as hype as I've seen almost anything, right? Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. So when you have access to 3 versions of the Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta since the beginning of 2025, it just leads to some imbalance because of the fact that we have this extra form, right? Vegeto does not have access to a Super Saiyan God form, but neither does Gogeta, right? So it's like they both have their blue version, and this would be nowhere near as bad if this guy was just a playable Vegeto. So I'm not sure that we can say that the devs hate him with just laying all of this stuff out here, but I can sort of see a point where it's like there are a lot of Gogetas. But again, when we look at just what is popular for the game, what are the most like, searched for characters, the most, why can't I talk all of a sudden? Like the most popular characters, what people want to use, the most returning players, the most viewed characters. Most of the time throughout the history of the game, Gogeta has sort of been the big ticket, right? But this is like back in the day, right? Like Super Vegeto, I think, was the most popular fusion for a very long time. And some people still argue he is like the biggest moneymaker for Dokkan, but I'm not exactly sure. It's very tough to track those metrics, especially with like Dokkan revenue and things like that, because typically when we get a Vegeto character, it's alongside a Gogeta. So it's very tough to sort of branch it out. But again, I think when it comes to this idea of developer favoritism, I just don't really see it as much in the case of Vegeto because of the fact that there's so many quality Vegeto units that were just better than the Gogeta counterparts in history. And right now we're just going through a stretch where there just isn't really a true Vegeto counterpart to some of these things, right? Where Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta doesn't really line up with Vegeto Blue. And I think this really is the biggest offender of the situation, right? Where it's like, they really just needed to have this guy fuse. And this would have made this such an easy thing to sort of ignore, right? But I think them not fusing does at least beg the question. Now, I don't want to, take like a grand stance and say like, my opinion is right, yours is wrong. It's just, I think it's a bit silly to have been playing this game for a bunch of years now and not at least look at the sample size of Vegito characters and Gogeta characters and be like, oh, the devs hate Vegito, because that's just not true. There have been so many eras of this game where Vegito has been the best unit in the game that you really can't, I just can't really get on board with they don't like Vegito. And like, it is odd, right? Because I think where you can make like a legit argument is the way that they handle the Vegito characters, where standalone Vegito Blue, you have to think about it like this too, right? Standalone Vegito Blue, we've gotten multiple times over, right? Standalone Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, we've also gotten multiple times over. So it is a bit bizarre that we only have that, like the LR standalone character was finally Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta and then not Vegito Blue. But then what you can argue is here's our standalone Vegito Blue right here, right? Standalone Super Vegito, I don't really know why we don't have that in terms of a LR character. We've had that with TURs for years, right? The Super Easy A up here for this guy, he was a standalone right off the bat. And really, they've just kind of gotten away from doing that. And the tag mechanic has sort of made this a thing. The joined forces units have made this a thing. And Vegito Blue specifically has just been on such a, has had since, 2023, has just had a really bad track record. With this character right here being as infamous as he is, and then this character also garnering some controversy as well, where it's like, yeah, we have Super Saiyan, or Blue Vegito is right there, and then Blue Vegito is right here, but really bad active condition, and it leads to a lot of frustrating things. So I think you could say the devs do not they've got it out for Vegito Blue for some reason. I don't know why, but if you want to make that argument, I think that is fair. But Vegito as a character, I just don't agree with the idea that the devs don't like him, because at the end of the day, he is still a big moneymaker. And he also, like, this guy was designed so well and he was so powerful that the devs were like, yeah, we can't have this guy on the battlefield for any more than 4 turns, because if he was permanent, like, everything would just become free and easy. So to me, it's like, I don't really see where, I just don't agree with the idea that the devs do not like Vegito. I'm not going to be able to agree with you on that one. I think the Gogeta spam is kind of crazy, but I think just looking at the hype of the player base, I can understand the hype for Vegito, because if we go down the list, so some of the peaks of the hype for this game, at least in my experience playing, right? Gogeta, for me on YouTube, performed better than Vegito did. The 7-year LRs, this was the more exciting one for most players. When we look at the hype from GDC this year, Part 2 was a lot more exciting for players than Part 1. But we also have to keep in mind that we truly don't have the real argument, because this wasn't Vegito. If this was standalone Vegito Blue, I think we could have the discussion, right? But that is not the case. So the side is going to go to Gogeta on this side for hype. The side is going to go for Gogeta for hype for the 7-year anniversary EZAs, the 10-year anniversary LR release. I think in terms of the Tech Gogeta compared to STR Vegito, I think players were more excited for this guy because they got the better animations, the better OST, stuff like that, right? But that's also, like, if they had swapped the places, maybe Vegito had gotten just like the slight quality upgrade for the animations and stuff like that. But his animations were still very good, by the way. But like, if they had the Tech Gogeta OST and like the 1-to-1 with the anime quality, like the quality jump with these animations were crazy. If I remember specifically, like, is this website? No, I think it's the wiki is what we would want for this one. There's so many good dokkan sites now. So if we go to over here, but if we like pull up the active skill for this Gogeta in specific, right? That's where you really can kind of see where it's like, oh my God, they really did take like the next step in terms of their fusion and stuff like that, or in terms of the animations. So like, we watched this right here and this was just insane, right? Like this one looked way better than the Vegito one, but that isn't to say that the Vegito one didn't look good. But this one was just like absolutely wild. I remember these were like easily the best animations in the game when this character dropped. I don't think really many people were refuting that. So you get this Vegito or this Gogeta right here. He's in there. He looks awesome, right? So I think if you just look at the all in all, like the overall hype of these characters, it's really close. Now, the 5th anniversary, this one is a little bit tough. I was newer to the community at this time. I wasn't really like heavily involved on Twitter and stuff like that. I saw Gogeta and Vegito Blue. I would imagine that most players were more excited for Gogeta Blue. If you were playing at the time, go ahead and testify for it or against it there. And then obviously with the 9th anniversary, there was no inclusion of Vegito Blue, but the theme was also the Dragon Ball Super movies, which Vegito does not partake in. So it's like if they want to get Beast Gohan in the game, they want to get an update for Broly, just Vegito does not fit into that timeline because of just how Gogeta was handled in Dragon Ball Super, being from the movie, which again, the movies just have like the better source material. They're the more exciting moments. They're the marquee things, right? Like when we look at the history of the game, movie heroes are like some of the most popular things that we have. And then also Gogeta 4. So if we go to the movie heroes and we just look at like what that category has given us over the years, movie heroes. La, 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 la. Where we at? It's weird doing it like this. Okay, so again, right, like movie heroes, some of the most hyped characters this game has had, right? The LR Gods, AGL Gogeta, right? The most broken unit in the game's history, the other most broken unit in the game's history, right? Vegito does not fit into this timeline, so I can't really blame the devs for shafting Vegito when they are trying to focus on movies because Vegito does not appear in the movies. And the movies are some of the most iconic characters from the just the overall scheme of Dragon Ball, right? Gogeta Blue, Super Gogeta, Beast Gohan, right? The Dragon Fist Goku, the Spirit Bomb Absorbed Goku, God Goku, Ultimate Gohan, right? The Ultimate Gohan's not really, he doesn't really count. God Vegeta, right? Cooler movie, Reviving the Bird Goku. These are some of the most memorable scenes from Dragon Ball because of the investment that they've given to them with the budget, with the movie, with the quality, with the memorable moments, with the short screen time. The characters have to look cool right away. And it's just like the hype is there with the movies. So with Vegito not appearing in the movies, there's just less opportunities to use him because if we're getting a Vegito and it's going to be a Vegito that is actually like hype and the players are wanting, it's either they go Super Vegito or they go Vegito Blue, where Gogeta, you have that third option, which again, you guys can see they used pretty sporadically throughout the year here, or pretty commonly, with it being in Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, the AGL one, right? So it just kind of comes down to this problem of Gogeta just happens to have that extra release, and you're sort of seeing that reflected in the numbers. And Gogeta also appears in the movies, where Vegito is just from the anime, where Gogeta, we have 2 different movies and GT to source from. And then with Vegito, it is just from one sequence from Dragon Ball Z and then one fight from Dragon Ball Super. So it just really comes down to the fact that there aren't as many ways to do it. And Vegito also doesn't go Super Saiyan in the fight against Fusamasu. He goes straight from base to blue and doesn't do anything in base in Dragon Ball Super. So it's just, again, less stuff for them to refer to. But when we have these Vegetos that come out, they tend to be extremely impactful for the game. When we look at the releases of Vegetos, and again, we've talked about this a lot in this video, but when this Vegito came out, he was the best unit in the game. When this Vegito came out, he was the best unit in the game. When this fake Vegito came out, he ended up being the best unit in the game during that celebration. Right? Like this guy came out and then content was not very nice to him, like right after that. It's not to say that he's bad, but this Vegito came out. He was the best unit in the game. This Vegito came out. He was arguable for best unit in the game. This tech Vegito, can't speak too much on him. I know he was good. This physical Vegito Blue got his EZA, was like the best unit in the game. So when we are talking about quality to quantity, I think that's really where you can make the argument that Vegito sort of has the upper hand. This guy I know was a bit odd. Like this was an awkward one. I will admit that. And then this guy, the STR one, when this guy came out, right, he was very good. He had bad animations, or he had a bad, like a meme intro, right? Not very good attack stats, but he was extremely effective for the content that he was made for with the chance to dodge, with the guard. This guy was free to play, so we're not going to count him too much. So I think that just like looking at the quality of Vegito characters here, I can't say in good faith that Omatsu and the devs just completely hate him. I just think that Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, when this guy came out, excuse me, he was the best unit in the game, right? I just can't speak to them like not liking Vegito. I don't think that's true because typically when we get a Vegito unit, he is one of the best in the game. And the rule has been over the years when a Vegito comes out next to a Gogeta, Vegito has just been better. And again, the extra content from the movies is why you see Gogeta a bit more frequently. The extra content from GT is why you see Gogeta more frequently. And this just happened to be the year of fused fighters, and there are just more Gogetas than there are Vegetos. If you want to say that the devs hate Vegito for the lack of Vegito Blue in this character, I'm not going to sit here and tell you like that's an L take, like you're dumb. I just think that it's a narrative that people are starting to paint that I do not agree with, and that is why I wanted to talk about that today. So The Vegito situation is crazy, right? I'm going to try that title for this video. We'll see how it goes. It'll just be for fun. But I hope you guys enjoyed this one, right? It's kind of fun to just come on here and talk about the history of the game and things like that. It's always nice to sort of take a step back from just focusing on like how to use your stones, how to use your coins, doing the guides and stuff like that. I love doing that, right? Like that's why I do this stuff. But it's also nice to get on here and just kind of talk about the game a bit. So let me know what you think down below of these characters, and let's go ahead and shout out some members. Okay, so as always, if you guys want to become a channel member, there is a link in the description. It is a way to further support me. You get a badge next to your name. You also get exclusive access to emojis in the chat when I go live. You get an exclusive role in the Discord, early access to Zero to Hero episodes, as well as a shout out at the end of every video. So I appreciate everybody watching up to this point. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you are new, and big shout outs to Cosmo, Darth Anguish, Van, Brian V, and Raudokun, as always, for being members of the channel. I appreciate your guys' support. It means the world to me. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.